everybody. Randy Patterson here again with Boomerocity, and we have an old friend of ours on this episode. If you've followed Boomerocity for a year or more, you already know that Ricky Byrd, the Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, formerly of Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, is a great friend of Boomerocity's, and we have him on every chance we get, which is usually when he has some new music coming out, which is the case this time. As you can tell from the background here, he has a brand new album out called NYC Made. And if you don't feel like you've got the Bronx down pat by the time you hear this music, there's just something wrong, because this rock and roll comes from the Bronx. It has Ricky's a whole upbringing coming through with every note and every vibe of this, each and every song on the album. I'm a Southern boy, but even I know New York sounds when I hear it, and this is some of the best you'll ever hear. If you don't mind, while you're listening to this interview, would you please hit like, because I know you're going to like it. And if you're not already a subscriber, would you please hit subscribe? It's free, but it helps us out tremendously. So without any further ado, here's my latest interview with Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Ricky Byrd. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care. Ricky.
What's up, man?
Going, everything's up. Man, I like all those CDs in your background, man. If you left me alone in there, it might be dangerous for us both. So
Yeah, I truly cannot tell you the last time I pulled one out and listened to it.
Do you download them into your device or?
Yeah, at some point I went nuts and downloaded everything onto my laptop, which in turn winds up on my phone.
Right.
You know, probably not every CD, but all the important ones.
Yeah, yeah. Same
Yeah, but
here.
I don't, I mean, to my left is all of these like DVDs. I don't watch DVDs either. Like, if you have a DVD, for some reason, you'd rather watch it on TV when it comes on.
Well, I'm one of those type of people. Your lovely wife sends me lots of DVDs from her accounts that
Yeah, we got
she
all of them.
does. I bet you do. But I actually watch them, so I have a lot of fun with it. And rather than watching junk on TV, I'd rather watch some rock and roll of some
Well, a
sort.
lot of
So,
these DVDs she does winds up on TV, obviously.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like I gotta get the three remotes out. I gotta remember how to go onto this DVD player. It's like a whole thing.
Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. So, well, Ricky, thanks for taking the time to join me again. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. And usually when
Thank
we
you.
do, it means you've got something new coming out. But before we get to this one, I was wanting to ask you how the last album did, Rhapsody in Blues.
The last single.
The last single, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how did it do? I mean, it was played a lot and still is in the Underground Garage, in Little Steven's
Right.
Underground Garage. I mean, we weren't really. And people could download it, but I don't know. I don't even ask. I mean, I just did it because of Jeff Beck,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
just put it out there, and then hopefully people download it,
Hmm.
So and it's on this record, as you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've
Well,
included that.
the other thing I wanted to ask you, I think that's probably even more important than music, which I think music is highly important, is your work in helping people with sobriety. How's that coming along, or any cool stories tied to that?
Well, obviously, I put out Clean Getaway and Sobering Times. Those last two
Hmm.
records, they spoke to addiction and recovery. Then I started writing new songs, and I was like, you know what? Let me not write those for right now until I have a different way to say the same thing. You know what I
Right.
mean? Because it's all about the same thing. You just got to find different ways to say it. The only song on this record on NYC Made that speaks to that is Luann, which
Hmm.
came out as a digital single in the Underground Garage sometime last year.
I heard that.
And
Yeah.
that is, that speaks to this girl, a woman named Luann, and I'm trying to, or the singer, whoever's singing it, which is me, but you know what I mean, is
Yeah.
trying to lead her towards recovery, I guess, or just pointing things out. other than that, I'm 37 years and a half in recovery, and still go to community support group meetings a few times a week. Still speak to people every day in recovery. The only thing I haven't been doing, and I do a couple of events. I did one for the Karen Foundation in
I saw
Florida.
that. Hmm.
I did one for Rich Pagano's foundation. We did it at the City Winery a couple of
Hmm.
months ago. So I'm always open to do those. The only thing that I really, once this record comes out, I could relax. I'd like to start doing my recovery music groups again, which I
Yeah.
haven't done really since COVID. I mean, before COVID. It's
Yeah.
difficult to get back into those places, treatment facilities, because there is still COVID and it's in an enclosed environment like that. They're really careful about people coming in and going out. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But I really, really, really enjoy doing those. Like I take my acoustic guitar and my little book of lyrics and I go in and play to like, I mean, it could be 20, it could be 70 clients in treatment and, spread the message.
Yep.
There's another way to live. And the joy I get out of it is the looks on their faces when I'm doing these songs, whether they're laughing or tearing up or thinking. And then I get, messages, from on social media from some of them years later saying, "I remember I saw you in so and so, and I'm still listening to those songs, and it's helping to keep me sober." So
Well,
hopefully we can get that up and running again.
I hope so too. I don't think I told you before when we talked why this resonates with me because I had a great grandfather who I never met, and a cousin who I adored. Both of them at different, obviously my great grandfather, like I said, I never met, but they both had committed suicide as a result of alcohol, being drunk and are under the influence of some way, shape, or form. And then I've had other relatives who have died for health reasons directly tied to alcohol. And so I was fortunate in that I was raised in a way that said, look, abstinence is just the best way to go. And that's the way I've lived my life, my entire life. I'm not saying I've never sipped one, but I never developed a taste. I mean, I don't desire it. I don't crave it. And I've had a lot of people tell me, hey, hats off to you. We wish we never started, even though they weren't alcoholics or anything. So just because of what I've heard about and witnessed in my family, seeing what you do to me means the world to me because I know you're
Thank
saving
you.
lives out there. So my hat's off to you on that, and I'm always willing to cheer you on that anytime you've got
Appreciate
something
it.
going on that you'd like to plug. So
Yeah, I mean, I have that in my family too. Exactly that. And and then I have an uncle that's in recovery almost 50 years. So there's the thing about abstinence, like there's a lot of reasons why some people become that. Some of it is genes, like your
mhm.
chance is higher if it's in your family.
Yep.
And some of it's situational, if you live in the midst of people drinking and drugging.
Hmm.
But yeah, listen, people that can just go to a bar after work, a hard day, and have a throw back a couple and go home and they have responsibilities with their kids and they do them and they wake up the next day and they're fine. Good for
Yeah.
them.
Yep.
It just never
Exactly.
it didn't work that way with me. So
And I don't know if it would have for me or not, and I'm not going to find out. So
yeah, it's a nasty way to go.
yeah, it is. It really
The
is.
end is always horrific for people that die from either alcohol related, getting in your car drunk and driving into a light pole,
Yep.
whatever, or your
Or
or your
just or,
organs fail.
yeah, or you get pulled over and you get very expensive bills and for DUIs and all that kind of stuff that can impact family finances and that kind of
Or
thing. And
you get
it's
a
all
DUI
of it.
and you run somebody over and kill them. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
million way. And as far as the drugs go, these days with fentanyl being in so many different things, it's really playing Russian roulette. We used to say, you're playing Russian roulette with your life, but now it's like you don't even know. You take a Xanax because you're had a long day and you have a lot of anxiety, and you get it from the wrong person and it's got fentanyl in it, and that's the end.
You're gone. Yeah. Or addicted
So
or something.
anyway,
So, well, man, this new album, I love it. Tell me about it.
I
What's the
appreciate
story behind it?
it's hopefully New York driven.
I
Well,
gathered
it's
that.
yeah. I mean, why is it called New York City NYC Made? Is because it was and I am. Grew up in the Bronx until I was like 13, moved out to Queens, then moved into Manhattan, then back to Queens. Um, but I'm just a New York character. My rock and roll started at Max's Kansas City, uh, on 17th and Park, where the New York Dolls started and where everybody
Yeah.
went when they played giant shit. Like Zeppelin would wind up there. And I was like 16. And all of those clubs, those legendary places you see on Netflix or wherever, like that's where I was hanging out when I was that age. So
Hmm.
I'm just a New York rock and roller. And it's called NYC Made because of that, because that's where it was made and that's where I was made. And also, I was trying to make a slight statement. I got a little upset about during the campaign season when people were pissing all over my town uh, from all over the country, that it's this horrible, dangerous nightmare like Gotham City or something, before Batman
Right.
gets there, which is not true. I mean, obviously, New York is beautiful and gorgeous, and people want to move here and come from all over the world to visit. And yeah, of course, we got problems, man. It's a giant city with millions of people, and there's
Right.
issues, but it's a big city. So stuff was greatly exaggerated for the benefit of politics and bullshit.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say, no, no, NYC is my town, and I will always be here. I can't see myself moving out, but anything could happen. And it goes, you have good years, you have dangerous years, you have, it comes and goes, but it's a giant city, man. And you got
Well,
people of all races, creeds, religious. It's terrific.
mhm. Well, I have a guy I talked to a couple years ago. I was having lunch with him, and he told me, now, he's a very conservative person in his politics. Was watching Fox News, and he and his family went to New York City, expecting,
Be
Armageddon
robbed.
there. Yeah, Escape
And you,
from New York type of
yeah,
stuff. And he said it wasn't true. He says, we didn't see anything that we heard about on Fox News. And
no,
that
but
was coming from somebody that was always watching them.
are there pockets of crime? Yeah, but it's a giant city. Are there shootings? Yes. Again, it's a giant city, but millions of people take the subway every day,
Yep.
and they're fine.
Yeah.
But when something happens, I'm not saying it's good that something happens. I'm just saying, you know, give us a break. It's
Yeah. It
still the
gets
place where
magnified.
everybody wants to visit and come to see Broadway and the Christmas tree and Rockefeller Center, and
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
you know,
It
I
could
grew up in the
happen anywhere.
Bronx. Yeah, of course it can, and it does.
I live in the Smoky Mountains, Ricky. It happens here. So we just don't have a subway. We have a trolley. So
Wow, trolley, cool. But that's the header.
yeah.
As far as the music goes, um, I finished Sobering Times, and I made a conscious decision, like I said, not to follow up with more recovery tunes.
Hmm.
Um, although there's one, like I said, Luann, um, which is like a recovery vibe, but with like Jerry Lee Lewis and Little Richard music, I guess.
Yeah.
But Stephen Van Zandt said to me after Sobering Times, like he's always played my stuff, thank God. Uh, and he said, "You should be on Wicked Cool, the label." I said, "Yeah, sounds cool. Let's do it." But I said, "But I want to do." I was going through this thing where it's like, I spend so much time and money and writing 10, 12 songs, 14 songs. And people, if they don't, I don't really tour right now. I don't tour.
Hmm.
I do events. I'll do a solo gig or something, but I don't have a band or anything. Um, And I do like to put stuff on the record, so I'd have to have a band as big as ELO at this point. A lot of ear candy on there. But I said I can't see doing a whole record because people went for the radio, whatever radio there is left that would play my kind of stuff. They play one or two songs, and unless you buy the record or download it or purchase a hard copy, you don't get to the meat and potato stuff in the middle or at the end.
Right.
Let's put out singles like Tommy James.
Yep.
And so he thought that was a cool idea. And so what they did was I did Glamdemic Blues. So the record took a year and a half because of scheduling and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
Glamdemic Blues I wrote obviously sitting in my basement during the pandemic. That's what that song's about.
Mm-hmm.
And I went in the studio and finished it. That was the first song for this record done.
Mm-hmm.
I finished it after we could all visit each other again. Then came Alien. That was number two.
Mm-hmm.
Alien was written because I had watched on TCM. I had watched The Day the Earth Stood Still, which the theme is they come down. Michael Rennie, I think that's how he says his last name, comes down to Earth. Old black and white '50s movie. Comes down to Earth to sort of. He's the human delegate for the outer space people to tell us that we're out of time. You guys screwed up. Blah blah blah. I watched that. I had a dream that night that I was in a small interrogation room, like you see a police interrogation room in a '50s black and white B movie, at a little round table with the light, swinging over me, that one horrible light. But it wasn't police. It was three or four standard old school aliens, and they were interrogating me. And
They didn't do it like on South Park, did they? With
probably. I mean, I don't watch South Park. Sitting next to me was Van Zandt. See, and the only thing I don't know from this dream is whether he was Silvio Dante from The Sopranos or was he Stephen Van Zandt. But he was the mediator, and
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to buy the Earth more time. That's my dream. And I woke up from that dream, and I sat down with my guitar, and I wrote Alien. So that's what Alien's about. It's about how we've screwed up. So if you listen to the lyrics, and all the lyrics are right here. See, they're
I've
all
got
inside.
that. Yep.
It's all inside.
Yep.
Stephen loves lyrics, and so do I. And I love writing liner notes too. So that's two. Then came Luann. So I just started with a riff, and that was the one I let slip into a little bit of addiction recovery stuff. Even though, like, if you didn't know, you probably wouldn't know. It's more the way Tyler would talk about it, in Aerosmith. And
Mm-hmm.
and then finally Jeff Beck passed away, which is a horrible tragedy because he was one of my 4 or 5 main guitar influences when I was a kid
Mm-hmm.
and an adult, obviously. And I wrote that, and I tried to write words. I couldn't figure out how to, everything sounded really hokey. And I said, let me try to write an instrumental. So I wrote the melody. I wrote the chords, and then I wrote the melody. And it's the first instrumental that I've ever written in my life. So I
Wow.
called it Rhapsody in Blues with an S because
Mm-hmm.
Rhapsody in Blue is like my favorite piece of music, like Gershwin
Mm-hmm.
lover, right? It's about 4 or 5 songs or pieces of music that makes me tear up, and that's one of them when
Mm-hmm.
it goes to the refrain. And that's he wrote that in New York, like I think the Upper West Side or something. So then Wicked Cool put that out, and they played that in the Underground Garage.
Mm-hmm.
I keep writing meanwhile, because it takes time once you submit it for it to get on the radio, months.
Right.
And I'm writing and writing, and all of a sudden I have 14 songs. So it's like, oh, I think I might have an album, I guess. And then I kept submitting them, and then Van Zandt, dug what he dug. The 1 or 2 songs he wasn't thrilled with, or they weren't right for the record or something like that. Didn't wind up on the record. I mean, I had the final choice. They came up with I let them come up with the. Actually, Dennis Mortensen, one of the producers, he came up with the order of the songs. And then, there was one that I was questioning, that one or that one, and I picked this one. In the end, I'm the artist. I get to do what I want. But I like having input. That's why I wanted to sign to Wicked Cool, because I wanted input.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lonely job recording your own records. And me and Bob Stander recorded Lifer, Clean Getaway, Sobering Times, NYC Made at Parcheesi Studios, which is out in Long Island.
Mm-hmm.
We co-produced the records. Um, and that's where the record came from. That's a lot of time from when the whole thing was done. It's been months, like 6 months, easy, until they said it's coming out March 28th. So I didn't really work hand in hand with Steven for the first half of the record, first three quarters. I didn't know what the process was. Yeah, we're friends, like we're acquaintances. Now we're friends.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I thought you just submitted the song, Steven Yade or Nade, and then they wound up on the radio, and then you know, that's a good one. Let's keep that one.
Mm-hmm.
When I got to the Jeff Beck song, I ran into Maureen Van Sant at a club in the city at an event, and I said, it was right after I finished Rhapsody in Blues. I said, I have this Jeff Beck instrumental. She said, send it to me. I sent it to her. She said, I love this. It's fantastic. Steven's got to hear it. She played it for Steven. He got in touch with me. And then for the last couple of songs, he was very involved with, well, like we were on the phone all the time, from the studio. I would just send him stuff and he probably listened to it on his phone. And he
Mm-hmm.
said, do this, put this here, try this over here, make the vocals louder. I love that, because it's only my opinion and Bob's, and I want somebody else's. Um, so it was that song. It was Transistor Radio Childhood, which is the first single that came out attached to the record, not counting
I
those other
love that.
four.
I love that song.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm getting a really great response from it. That song, so I sent it to him stripped down because, like we said before, I like to put a lot of stuff on my records. I get carried away sometimes. Um, Hidden stuff, little guitar lines or vocal stuff. I sent it to him stripped down because he said, let's do this one stripped down. He said, this is a classic, but it doesn't sound like it's finished yet. So him and myself and Bob and well, what do you think? Well, try keyboards here. You got to make those bapas louder in the front, and I don't like the fact that you're singing the backgrounds by yourself because I sing mostly all my backgrounds
Mm-hmm.
are me singing to myself, which makes them very tight. And he's saying they need to be messy a little bit. I also, Jeff Kazee and Christine Allman, the Beehive Queen, sing on a couple of songs when I can get them out to Long Island. And I said, well, all right, so what do you have in mind? So he said, come up to Renegade Studios in Manhattan, the Wicked Cool office. We'll put a couple of guys together. We got Willie Nile, great artist.
Love Will. Love him.
Willie, yeah, great guy too. Very supportive guy. Uh, Mark Ribler, who is a great artist on Wicked Cool and also Stevens MD for the Disciples of Soul. Jeff
Mm-hmm.
Kazee from Southside Johnny's band and also plays on all my music. And Steven. And they sang the Bapas. See, that was all them doing. Then came the discussion of how loud the Bapas should be.
People have no idea this what goes on an album.
Totally. It's insane sometimes. Well, and when you bring other people in for input too. So I kept saying, aren't they too loud? And he kept saying, they're not loud enough. And then we went back 3 or 4 times, and finally he texted me, say, one day you'll learn to trust me. He wrote. So I said, all right, dude, make them as loud as you want. I don't want to care. So that's the Bapas. And on the liner notes, if you see, I say the Bapas are sung by the Baba Black Sheep singers. You know what I mean? Why do I do that? Well, because when I was a kid, I used to stare at the back of the Faces records with the liner notes or on the inside. And Rod Stewart always wrote funny liner notes. So I got into the habit of putting in a couple of things like that. So Transistor Radio Childhood, how did I write that? Been a rough couple of months. It was at the end of the record. My mom was sick. She's since passed October 21st of last year.
Sorry.
And then my stepfather just passed 3 weeks ago.
I didn't know that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, I'm real. I don't put a lot of that stuff on social media.
Yeah.
It's a bummer to look at stuff on there now without that with everybody with what's going on. So I was in a reflective mood, see, and I was thinking about myself as a kid. And I went down to visit my mom when she was in the rehab before she passed, and we were talking about the Bronx, and we were laughing and talking about this. And I started to, I came up with the music. I always come up with music first, and I said, "What do I want to sing about?" And I remembered that I always had a baseball bat and a glove and a transistor radio because we lived right up the block from Yankee Stadium, so I'm a diehard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, And the transistor radio was part of our existence. Like that's how we listened to AM radio or the ball game,
Mm-hmm.
whether up on the roof, like I mentioned in the song. And I name dropped a couple of people that I remember listening to. AM radio was also why I have such a wide love of different music, you know, because you'd listen to the top 40 back then, it would be Trini Lopez, Otis Redding, Dock of the Bay, which I mentioned in the song.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy James, the Rolling Stones, the Kinks, You Really Got Me, Frank Sinatra. This was all on one station, you know.
That's
Frank
when
Sinatra,
radio was cool, though, because you could
yes,
hear. I told people you can hear Donna Fargo to Led Zeppelin on the same station.
exactly. And
Loved it.
that's why a lot of us of this demographic have a lot of different influences in music. Now, to me, Underground Garage fills that void. Because if you
Mm-hmm.
listen to Underground during the day, you will hear Trini Lopez and you will hear Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, along with the Dolly Rots and me and this one and that one. So that's great. Otherwise, Sirius XM is pretty subdivided. Like
Yeah.
here's the Tom Petty station, here's the Bruce Springsteen station, here's the Soul station, here's Bluesville. So it's not all in one place, except for
Right.
in the Underground Garage, right? So that's why I love it. So that's how that song is, and the end result is it came out January 27th, coolest song in the world for that week, and I've since been getting messages on social media. Thanks for writing that song. It brought me right back to when I was a little kid, when life was a lot simpler and the world seemed brighter.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that I did my job with that. And then the featured single for the record is Anna Lee, which is a soul song, right? With some doo-wop in the
Mm-hmm.
front, which brings us back to the New York vibe. And Dion from the Bronx,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's what I
Love
was going
him.
for.
Yeah.
That's what I was going for at the beginning of that. And so we're at the end of the album, and what I do at the end of each album is I say to Bob Stander, my co-producer, so we pick these 12 songs. We have three extras that will wind up somewhere. Nothing gets wasted. Do we have anything else? And he says, we have Anna Lee that was supposed to be on Lifer, but we ran out of room and it just didn't fit quite. Anna Lee, I wrote with Southside Johnny back in 2007. It was completely done, done. Minimal drums. We added more drums. And I sent it to Steve and he said, this goes on the record. So I said, oh, great. I love this song. Whenever I play acoustic, I always play Anna Lee. It gives me a chance to sing like that. It's like an old Faces kind of melody, like an old Rod kind of Otis Redding-y
Mm-hmm.
thingy. And it shows a different side of me. And Steven said, let's add mandolin. He played mandolin. Jeff Kazee played accordion and, of course, piano. I think he played in the original one. We added a fiddle. I don't think I added any more guitars, but yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Maybe some tambourine or something. And that's going to be the featured single. So it comes out on March 28th, along with the single, the album dropping.
Mm-hmm.
And and that's basically the story of how this came to pass. And the main thing I want people to know is, it sounds like Ricky Byrd, right? It's me. Well, who is me? Who am I? I'm a sponge of all the stuff that I grew up on. You could hear there's a little Mata Hoopo because I played with Ian.
Mm-hmm.
There's a song on there called Rock and Roll's Demise has been greatly exaggerated, which I wrote as like a Who song, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
and a little Stonesy vibe. There's like a good riff, but that's me. Like that's who I am. I'm not creating anything new. I'm just taking what I grew up on and I turned it into what I sound like.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not afraid to put little like I always, Steve Marriott from Humble Pie was a friend of mine, and the Small Faces, and I can't remember what song it is, but I do a Steve scream on every on every record, and it's very much the somebody mentioned to me it's a lot of looking back, like Sweet Bird of Ute, right out of
I
Cousin Vinny.
cracked up when
Because
I saw that.
yeah, Bob said, shouldn't it be youth? I'm like, no, it's Ute.
No, not in New York.
Uh, yeah, and that's the story of me as a teenager going to those places. I even mentioned Max's Kansas City in there, and it's where I met Carol, my wife, and
Yep.
I love, which was my favorite song. I don't know, dude. I love all of them. I love bits of everything. I love the end of Transistor Radio Childhood with my Beach Boys thing vibe.
Yep.
Best of Times. I hope people listen to Best of Times because I think that's a really cool song. And the best of times was spent with you. Now you could call it what you want. I wrote it. I personally wrote it about Carol, that song, but it could be your higher power. It could be whatever your thing is. That's
Hmm.
that's what I wrote that about. And I put it last because I like putting a song like that
Yeah.
as the good night. You
Yeah.
know, and the only thing I say to people when I do these interviews is, I realize that you have a Spotify subscription and you have an Apple subscription or whatever else you have. And that's great because you can listen to everything in the world for $15 or whatever it is. But artists need you to purchase their music.
That's right.
That's how we make new music. See, I
Yep.
know you don't know this or you don't think this, but Spotify um, and that those subscriptions streaming does not really make us any money. It's
Yeah.
the amount you have to stream to make any money is ridiculous. If you go on the link that maybe Carol sent you for the Orchard
Hmm.
or rickybird.com,
Hmm.
there's a link to the Orchard link where you could download, you know, what is it, $2, something like that, $1.99. Those all add up, so we could do more music. It costs money to go
That's
into the
right.
studio. See,
That's right.
uh, and or you could pre-order the record, so it's out in 2 weeks.
Hmm.
Or if you want, I don't know when this comes out, but you can. As of March 28th, I will be selling signed copies of this guy and the CD or the CD. And digital is all wicked cool stuff, so you could get digital from them.
Hmm.
But I will be selling signed copies of this, the CD, and I'm always throwing in swag. So there'll be a signed copy of the Sobering Times record if you don't have it, or Clean Getaway. I got some really cool new 8x10s, which is actually the cover of what was the cover of Rhapsody in Blues, the Jeff Beck tribute.
Hmm.
I have stickers. I made up every album, every record I do. I make up guitar picks from
Cool.
those records. So NYC Made guitar picks, but my signature on the back. And those are all going packages, and you'll have choices of which package.
Well,
Maybe think,
I'm going to do that now. Carol sent me the vinyl of this, but I want to order because I want to get a signed copy of this as well as on the other. So I'm going to hit the site because you can't see it because this is virtual, but I've got signed albums all over hanging on the wall
yeah,
all
yeah.
over my office, and I want your stuff on there to join it. So,
Oh, I appreciate it. I hope everybody does that. And also, what I'm thinking of doing, so all that will be in a package with everything you purchase at different price points, obviously. And then I noticed that I have guitar picks, not a million of them left, but I have. So there's new ones for this one. There's Sobering Times. There's Clean Getaway guitar picks. There's a couple of Lifer guitar picks. And my guitar tech from back then says, I know I have a giant bag of Ricky Byrd Blackheart picks somewhere. And I'm like,
whoa.
dude, find them. Because I have some, but I don't want to give them away. I don't have a lot of them,
No,
maybe
you got to
10,
keep them.
15.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it would be really cool to put together a little package of if you want to buy a set of Ricky Byrd guitar picks from different
Oh, that would
years.
be cool. That would be cool.
So all of that stuff's going to start on the 28th of March when the record officially drops. You know, keep telling Wicked Cool, write them and tell them that you love the new songs. We need independent artists like myself. We need not only encouragement, but street teams. It's like if you and this is only if you dig the music. If you don't, then
Right.
go listen to
Right.
somebody else. But if you dig what I do, then try to like put some legs behind it,
Right.
and maybe help out because we want to keep making music. And eventually, what's going to happen is if everybody just streams, artists are not going to be able to continue making new music because there won't be money to do it.
Right.
Yeah, you could do stuff in your house, of course,
Right. But
but you can only go so far. There's still expenses,
that's right. That brings
So
up
that's it.
something, Rick.
What's that?
That brings up. Do you have a couple minutes? Because I wasn't going to ask you this, but this
Yeah.
popped into mind. I'd love to get your thoughts on this because you're talking about artist support and all that. And I talked to, gosh, it was Lawrence Gowan of Styx the other day,
Hmm.
last week, and asked him the same question. With all these catalogs being bought up by,
Mm.
these, like Hypnosis, which is being bought out now by someone else, and, you know, people with all these god awful amounts of money paying huge sums for big catalogs on one
Right.
hand, and then you've got AI over here on the other hand. Just as a novice, I'm not a musician. I'm a business geek, but not a musician, a little bit of a techie. And I see this convergence happening that I don't think I really like, just as a ethicist and as a music fan and as a business geek. And that is what I see happening is once all these catalogs kind of compile into the hands of a few, corporate few, and then AI gets thrown in there. Number one, I think royalties will magically start being paid more accurately because there won't be any choice. But then I wonder what happens to all these catalogs. Do they get remastered, remixed, and all this stuff? And, what happens to, I mean, this will probably
Well,
happen after we're gone, but what are your thoughts on that?
well, I don't know. Each contract probably has provisions that you can't remaster or remix this. I
Mm-hmm.
would assume not all of them, but I'm sure some artists are going to be like, listen, I'm selling you my catalog, but you can't do this, this, or this. But I could tell you how I found out about how this catalog thing works. First of all the remaining record companies are buying each other up. So that's even getting smaller than it was. And if you're on a major label, whatever that means now, and you have a hit record, and then the next record doesn't do good, they're just tossing you off the label. I mean, you don't get the chance that you used to get. Wicked Cool is a different situation. I could just keep putting out music.
Right.
Um, and I don't spend a lot of money doing these records. I mean, it's a lot of money coming out of your pocket if it comes out of your pocket, but it's not like what would from the old days,
Right.
how we used to spend on when you were in the studio for 8 months. No, it's not like that. I'm sure somebody does that, but that's not how I do it. But I remember I was talking to my friend who since passed that worked at ASCAP, and I was saying, I think we were talking about getting songs in movies or TV. Like, oh, no, I'm sorry, it wasn't my friend. It was somebody else I was speaking to about getting stuff. I said, I've got these two albums with these two records of recovery songs. And every time I go to watch streaming on Netflix or something, there's like another show that has a subtext of alcoholism or drug addiction. How do I get my music to them before this freaking show comes out?
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, he says Netflix buys. It's very hard to get to the music supervisors, and it's they've all changed from when I knew them. Um, and they're getting inundated because that's one of the only ways for an artist to make money is to get something on one of those shows. See,
Mm-hmm.
unless you go on tour and sit at a table after your show and sign records. Um,
Meet and greets.
so
Yeah.
he said that Netflix will buy Universal like a package, like you're talking about, of thousands of songs for X amount of dollars. So they just go in there and they find stuff that would suit the show.
Mm.
So that's an answer to your question. How does an outsider get into those shows unless you know somebody? And it's difficult. Um, yeah, the more. everything gets pasted together, and the independence of all these labels, and your music sort of gets tucked in with everything else, the harder it is to get something done.
Yeah.
And I can understand why these people that are, in their 70s or whatever, at huge hits 40 years ago, they sell their catalog. Good for them, man.
Yeah.
And I don't have to do anything anymore. I just could write new songs. It doesn't matter, if I get on anywhere, anything, like, it's cashing out, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's
Well,
like you just
it's
won at the baccarat table, and you're saying, you know what, I could either stay here and keep spending my money, and there's a chance I'm going to lose everything, or I could just cash out.
yep.
And
Yep.
I don't judge anybody.
Yep. Well, I hear you, and the whole thing about standing out from the crowd. I hear you. I run into the same problem with my podcast and YouTube channel. I mean, when I started my website, 16 years ago, there were people doing what I was doing, but not as much. And now it seems like everybody's interviewing everybody, and the artists are getting in and interviewing everybody. So there's this, you know, this
Well, I
huge,
did stuff. I did stuff in recovery during COVID where I was Ricky Byrd and friends, where I would call on my recovery friends and I would interview them for this recovery organization. And I love doing that. People
it
said,
was
why don't you
very
do a
cool.
podcast? People said, why don't you do a podcast? It's like, dude, aren't there enough podcasts? Like, I don't need to do another pod. I don't need to write a book. I don't need to do a podcast. Let me just sit with a blank piece of paper and try to write music and get it played on the radio in Underground Garage. And I say Underground Garage because luckily Stephen loves what I do. But there's online radio, there's satellite radio,
Hmm.
there's the regular radio, like the stations in each town,
Hmm.
um, the classic rock stations. Okay, but I am classic rock, right? I played with Joan and the
Right.
Blackhearts, and I played with Roger Daltrey, and this one and that one, Southside Johnny. But it's very difficult to get new music played on those stations.
Yeah.
Is it impossible? I don't know. Maybe, but it's tough to get on those stations. So that's out. Top 40 radio is not going to play what I do,
No.
just straight up rock and roll. So you got online radio, which is all over the world, obviously, and the Underground Garage, which is all over the world. So as time moves on, you have to accept and adapt.
Yep. That's right.
And you realize, there's bands out there that are still on the road and they love being on the road. Joan she has a big summer tour. It's not for me anymore, to that whole
Yeah.
thing. I would do special things, but I just can't imagine, doing that for months on time anymore.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is to sell music, it's very limited how you can do it. So the
Hmm.
good news about social media is, like, I write something and everybody in the world sees it that's on my page.
Hmm. Hmm.
The bad news about social media is, like, every other person has a new record out,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether they're somebody in their house or in a studio. you know Everybody's selling something on underground on social media,
Yeah.
whether it's vitamins or music, or
Makeup.
pillows that make your neck not hurt, or so, like, what it's like if I posted something on my timeline right now, like in 10 minutes it would be at the bottom of somebody's timeline, like you wouldn't even see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, I appreciate that I could sit watching a Yankee game and post things on my phone, like as I'm watching.
Hmm.
But then it's like, oh, in the old days, in the old days, Sonny, your record company would be doing all this,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's up to the artist that I got to sit down and say, hey, I have a new record out. It's like, oh my God, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, it goes against my better nature, but yeah, there's no other way to do it,
Yeah.
you
Record
know,
companies want you to bring everything to them instead of them doing it for you. And then they want the whole
and they give you,
360 deal.
yes, yeah. So, like, what do? I mean, I still have stuff to say. When I have nothing to say, I won't do it anymore.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in the studio Saturday out in Long Island. Like, I have a new tune I'm working up, you know. with Aaron Comis from the Spin Doctors on drums, Bob on bass, so
Oh,
far, and
cool.
me on guitars. And we'll see what else we add. On this album is Aaron Comis from the Spin Doctors. Tommy Price
Hmm.
plays on that Who-ish kind of song,
Yeah.
Rock and Roll's Demise, from my old buddy from the Blackhearts. Steve Holley plays on a couple of songs. He was part of the early bit of the record.
Hmm.
Um, so those are the drummers. Uh, Jeff Kazee plays all the guitar keyboards. Uh, that we didn't talk about. Where is it? Oh, then along comes you,
Hmm.
which is like a
I like
slow,
that.
starts like an Otis song, and then it
Hmm.
just goes into like "Can't Turn You Loose" or something like this fast. With, I must admit, a badass guitar solo. Um,
Yes, it is.
and that's got the Uptown Horns on there with Little Steven wrote the horn chart for that. So, there's a good match, man. If you grew up when I grew up, there's a lot of stuff that's gonna pique your interest and make you smile. And if you're, from a different generation, learn what we listen to. You
That's
know,
right.
love what you love, but you gotta know the history.
That's right.
So hopefully, I'm a kind of a history lesson. If you want to look at it
Well,
that way, I'm the
a
History
fun one at
Channel.
that. So, what's your
Thanks,
plans for the rest of the year, man? What you got
and
going
good
on?
and good photos. No,
That's right. On the
is that
stoop. That looks.
sitting on a
That looks.
sitting on a stoop hours at a time? I got the ball game on. It's Yankee 6 to 5. This has that old Bob Dylan walking. I'm on McDougal
Yeah.
Street, brother. That's McDougal Street in the West Village. That's where we are.
Wow.
Inside, if you purchase the record, you will see a very mob-ish photo of me standing there. Literally, you don't see it in the picture, but the Cafe Wah, where Hendrix played, is to my left or
Hmm.
to my right, whichever way it was. I was kidding around because I'm working with Stephen. When we were taking pictures with this wonderful photographer, which happens to be Willie Niles' wife,
Ah.
and Carol Kay, my wife, does my publicity, so I keep everything
Hmm.
in the family. She took these photos, Christina Aragoni. She's wonderful. And she said, I got another idea. Let's come here. And she walked, there's an alley between Cafe Wa and I can't remember what's on the next, probably an Italian restaurant or something. And I said, take this. And I kind of gave it a Silvio Dante Sopranos look, just kidding around. And I saw the picture. I said, oh, that's got to go on the inside of the album, man. You know, that's screaming New York.
You mentioned Max's earlier, and I last year we were Facebook friends for a while, and I finally reached out to her, to Vicky Sewall, and we talked about
Right.
Max's and her work to keep that
Yvonne,
memory.
Yvonne,
Yvonne,
Yvonne.
you're right. You're
Yeah.
right. I keep wanting to call her Vicky. It is Yvonne. My bad. But fun chat and wonderful lady. And
Yes.
I've got to
Very nice.
reach out to Willie. I haven't talked to him in a couple of years. I need to see what he's up to and interview him again because he was a fun interview.
Well, I think he's
So,
finishing his new record.
well, then I'm going to ping him and see if we can get something lined up ahead of time,
And
to
he's
support
always
that.
playing. He's everywhere. Me, I get called. I do these events. You know, sometimes I don't. Like I'm leaving next week. I don't know when this airs once again, but I'm the end of this month, the end of March. I'm going to um, Silver Springs, Maryland, with Christine Ullman, the Beehive Queen. We're going to guest with this band at this Rock and Roll for Children benefit that we
Ah,
do every year. So I'm just going to train it. I'm not in the mood to fly right now, all things considered,
yeah.
and I just can't do the drive right now. I can't. It's supposed to be 3.5, 4 hours, and it's always like 7 from New York to Maryland, but with traffic. But you know, I think I'm doing. Excuse me. I'm sitting in with the band, maybe 7 songs, something like that. Easy cover songs,
Hmm.
and then next day I
Cool.
come home. And that's what I
Fun.
dig. And the charity Rock and Roll for Children is they raise money so parents can stay with their kids in this hospital where the kids are getting treated for cancer.
Ah,
So I've been doing that pretty much every year for the last 10 years or so.
Hmm.
And there's another one, Casey Cares, I do in the same area outside of DC. So that's the stuff. Like it gives me just enough rock and roll to satisfy my soul.
Yeah.
Not to be corny, but or to be corny. And then who knows? Like, let's see what happens if the record comes out. I mean,
Hmm.
I did mention to Van Zant, I said, I don't have a band, but if Wicked Cool ever did like an old Stax review or a Motown review, where
Oh,
you
that
have
would be cool.
the house band, and then you have the Wicked Cool artists come up and do 2 songs each, put my name down there on the list, brother. And he said, we did that once or twice. We'll probably do it again, you know? Like they have this big cruise they're doing. The Wicked Cool cruise is coming up in May
Oh,
or
yeah.
something.
Oh,
I said,
fun.
yeah, that's good because there's people that don't have bands,
That's right.
you know. And but I would love a challenge. Like I've played gigs while we was doing this record. I did Glamdemic Blues on acoustic. I always do Anna Lee. I mean, I've done Luann.
Hmm.
I've done Alien acoustic. I'll work up acoustic versions of whatever I can, and maybe I'll do a special gig or something, you know.
Oh, that'd be fun. That'd be fun. Well, if you get down this way, please have Carol give me a heads up so I can come
Where are
see
you?
you,
I'm sorry.
man.
Where are you?
I'm in the Smoky Mountains. I'm in East Tennessee. I'm 2 miles from Dollywood.
Oh,
Seriously.
wow. Good for you.
So
I,
yeah,
I
so I'm
love Dolly
outside of
Parton.
Knox. Yeah, I do too. She just lost her husband. Yeah,
I
it's
saw.
sad. But yeah, I'm
She's a
outside of
good
Knox.
soul.
She
She's a
is.
good
She
soul.
real and I've interviewed her one time. We're part of a group interview, and she is the same no matter what. And I know being where I live here, I know people that know her very well, and I know a lot of people say that, but these people really do. And she's the real deal, man. And
We met her.
she
I wish
she
I could find the picture. We went and saw her once here in the city, and I can't remember who we went with. Might have been with Tommy James. I can't remember. I got to ask her. But years and years ago, and we went backstage, and she was just sweet as hell.
Yep,
She
about
said, "I
four
like." She said,
about
"I."
four.
She said, "I like your hair where it stands up." Like,
Yeah, yours was real, hers wasn't, but
no,
she's what, like 4 foot tall. I mean, I'm
yes,
exaggerating,
very
but
small of height, but that's about it.
that's it. I got to reach out to Carol Kleffner because I've interviewed Tommy once. I want to interview him again, this time on camera. And we try to get something set up, and then something always gets in the way. So I'm
Oh
going to
my
reach
God,
out to
he's
her
so busy.
today.
He keeps telling me he wants to write, and every time I say, "Well, when can you do it?" He said, "Well, I'm on the road now for the entire spring and summer." I'm like, "I don't know, man. Let me know when. I'll come. I'll come to Jersey."
There you go. So,
Yeah.
well, Ricky, this is a lot of fun as always, and know that my door is always open to you. So if you got something you need to help getting the word out, I want to be part of that. And so,
I appreciate it, man.
love the album. I'm gonna drop Carol a note about getting a package that you were talking about, and find out what all the various costs are because I want to support it too. And but
Well,
it
you
sounds
I
like
have
fun.
my guitar tech and the guy Danny who does my website stuff. I said, let's prepare now because it's in 2 weeks. Then I could start selling it. I can't sell it myself until it comes out because Wicked
Right,
Cool is
right, right.
getting pre-orders. So yeah, I think if people love rock and roll and they followed my music and career, they're probably going to dig this record. I hope.
Well, I mean, people are buying vinyl again, so I think you'll do well on that as well. So,
Yeah, and we got the
but
CD too, and you could download the digital too. You could buy that.
yep,
It's New York City rock and roll.
yep, and I love it. I love it.
All right, man.
All right, my friends, stay safe, stay healthy, and let's talk again soon.
Absolutely. See you
Tell
soon, brother.
Carol I said hello.
I certainly will.
Bye bye.